In our headlines on this Wednesday, August 19th, here in South Korea. South Korea and the U.S. are downscaling their annual joint defense drills by ending them early as Donald Trump raises the prospect of dialogue with North Korea's Kim Jong-un reportedly this autumn. Here in South Korea, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Seoul for a two-day trip that covers talks on a wide range of bilateral and regional matters, including North Korea. In his latest social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump rules out talks with Iran while claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is open and in operation. Iranian officials, for their part, have been quick to dismiss the latter claim. The Ulchi Freedom Shield will come to a close on Friday this week, 6 days earlier than its original date, following Donald Trump's recent demand for downscaling in joint defense drills with South Korea to pave the path for dialogue with North Korea. Our defense correspondent Park Go-nu has the latest.
The annual Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise, one of the two major ROK-U.S joint military exercises, has officially been cut roughly in half. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said Wednesday that this year's exercise will now end this Friday instead of the originally scheduled August 27th at Washington's request.
We are making some adjustments to the duration and scale of the exercise. We'll continue discussions on various measures to achieve the objectives of the exercise and maintain a strong combined defense posture.
The U.S. Department of War also confirmed the adjustments, saying the changes preserve essential readiness and training objectives, with no degradation to U.S. training objectives. Under the revised plan, the command post exercise, which uses war game simulations, will now end after the defensively focused first phase. The second phase, which targets counteroffensive operations, will be cut entirely. An additional 14 combined field training exercises scheduled during UFS will also be scaled back. The decision comes just 2 days after U.S. President Donald Trump asked Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to scale back the exercise, citing his very good relationship with the North Korean leader and criticizing Seoul for what he described as a lack of support with the ongoing Iranian conflict. On Wednesday, Foreign Minister Cho said that a message to scale back exercises had not been conveyed to officials in either country, and that he doesn't view the move as a unilateral decision by the U.S. He also added that Defense Minister An Gyubek has been in close contact with Washington since Trump's remarks. The comments come amid speculation that U.S. Forces Korea Commander General Xavier Brunson's visit to South Korea's Defense Ministry on Tuesday may have been related to discussions over the exercise. Questions have also emerged over whether the shortened exercise could affect the Allies' efforts to transfer wartime operational control. Cho dismissed such concerns, saying that since the reduction came at Washington's request, he doesn't expect it to be used as grounds for delaying the transfer. Defense Minister An also said Wednesday the adjustment would not affect the joint assessment required for the OPCON transfer, as that process takes place during the first phase of UFS, which remains unchanged. Park Go-nu, Arirang News.
North Korea, for its part, has reiterated its denunciation of the annual defense drills between South Korea and the U.S. In a commentary carried on this Wednesday by its state-run media, the regime claimed the drills were becoming increasingly dangerous and warned that it would respond with new and evolved strength. While the statement also condemned the participation of the UN command in the Ulchi Freedom Shield, it stopped short of acknowledging the recent scaling back of the joint military exercise at the request of U.S. President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump's olive branch of sorts to North Korea is sparking rampant speculation about the prospects of direct diplomacy between Washington and Pyongyang. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Kim Do-yeon takes a look.
U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered a cutback of joint military drills with South Korea, aiming to open a diplomatic channel with Pyongyang. The Wall Street Journal reports Trump wants to meet Kim Jong-un during his trip to China for the APEC summit this November. Despite Washington's overtures, the Kim Jong-un regime has remained mostly silent, using state media instead to continue to denounce the ongoing ROK-U.S joint military exercise, Ulchi Freedom Shield. South Korea's Unification Ministry assesses direct engagement remains viable.
Kim Jong-un stated that if Washington drops its hostile policy, there is no reason they cannot get along. With President Trump scaling back exercises, recognizing the regime as a negotiating partner could lead to resumed dialogue.
Analysts warn reviving talks will prove far tougher than during Trump's first term. The Kim Jong-un regime has since codified its nuclear status into law.
Pyongyang now approaches talks as a declared nuclear state, demanding concessions far beyond past symbolic freezes.
Deepening ties with Moscow and Beijing offer the regime short-term relief, but fall short of replacing global markets. Comprehensive international sanctions remain the primary pressure point capable of pulling Pyongyang back to the table.
More importantly, to attract actual investment, which requires sanctions against the regime to be eased, U.S. North Korea relations must improve.
Analysts see Trump's push as a bid for a quick diplomatic victory amid prolonged tensions in Iran, with the midterm elections coming up in November. Also something Pyongyang would consider in terms of Trump's intentions. Seoul, however, hopes the move can break a years-long deadlock.
We hope this development leads to meaningful U.S. North Korea dialogue and expands into broader improvements in inter-Korean relations.
The question now is how far Washington is willing to reach to bring Pyongyang back to the table and whether Seoul is able to seize the opportunity. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Also here in Seoul, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun is hosting his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi starting today for talks on a wide range of bilateral and regional matters, including North Korea. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
China's top diplomat Wang Yi begins a two-day official visit to Seoul on Wednesday at the invitation of Foreign Minister Cho Hyun. The Foreign Ministry says they will exchange in-depth views on Korea-China relations, the Korean Peninsula, and regional and international issues of mutual interest. It will be their first Foreign Ministers meeting in 11 months upon Wang Yi's first visit to Korea in nearly 5 years. Their meeting will be followed by a formal dinner. Attention then turns to the Blue House on Thursday. President Lee Jae-myung's office says he and Wang Yi will assess the future direction of bilateral ties and regional developments, with Yi also conveying his regards to Chinese President Xi Jinping. Watchers will be listening for whether Yi seeks Beijing's support for the multilateral dialogue he proposed in his Liberation Day address, aimed at replacing the Korean Peninsula's armistice with a peace regime. Wang will also hold talks and a lunch with National Security Advisor Wi Song-la. But experts caution against relying too heavily on Beijing to bring Pyongyang back to dialogue or endorse or even mention North Korea's denuclearization.
China now has very limited room to act. A key reason is the growing importance of North Korea's relations with Russia.
In wanting to maintain some form of trilateral alignment among North Korea, China, and Russia, this is not necessarily disadvantageous for China in building a front against the U.S. Thus, China has no reason to step in directly and try to persuade North Korea.
The talks may also expose a wider strategic divide as Beijing watches host U.S.-backed nuclear-powered submarine program and closer security cooperation with Washington and Tokyo.
From China's perspective, Korea acquiring nuclear-powered submarines would erode the strategic and military advantage Beijing has enjoyed in Asia since the Second World War. This is also intertwined with stronger trilateral cooperation among Korea, the U.S. and Japan, which China strongly opposes.
Analysts are also watching for practical economic deliverables, although technology competition and diverging supply chains still constrain cooperation. Seoul says ahead of the APEC summit in Shenzhen this November, the foreign ministers' talks will assess progress in restoring bilateral relations and prepare the ground for further high-level exchanges. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
In other news now, researchers at the state-run KDI have revised upward their growth projections for the South Korean economy, citing stellar chip exports. Our Lee Ji-yeon has the latest outlook.
Korea's state-run think tank, the Korea Development Institute, has upgraded the country's GDP growth outlook for the rest of this year and next year. According to a report released by the KDI on Wednesday, it raised Korea's GDP growth forecast for this year to 3.2%, up 0.7 percentage points from the previous estimate in May. The institute also upgraded next year's growth outlook by 0.5 percentage points compared to its previous estimate. A KDI official explained that the upward revision was driven by expectations that the current semiconductor rally will persist. Exports and facility investments have shown strong momentum so far this year, and this positive trend is expected to continue on the back of sustained global AI investments. The growth outlook for goods exports this year was upgraded to 8.7% this year, higher than its May forecast. Likewise, the growth outlook for facility investments was also raised to 7.9% this year, led by global AI infrastructure expansion. In light of these economic developments, the current account balance is projected to record an unprecedentedly large surplus. Driven by surging semiconductor prices, the KDI expects a current account surplus of around $360 billion for both this year and the next. However, because Korea's economy relies heavily on global chip demand, experts warn that future fluctuations in the semiconductor market could trigger greater volatility.
The problem is that semiconductors account for 39% of our total exports, and exports represent 41% of our GDP. If the growth in semiconductor exports slows down, then the growth rate of our total exports could also slow down, ultimately lowering our economic growth rate.
Because Korea's growth has been heavily concentrated in the semiconductor sector, which has a low employment inducement effect, the KDI report also highlighted that the high growth rate has not translated into a clear improvement in the labor market. Therefore, despite the strong overall outlook, the report projects household-level economic indicators such as private consumption and employment to show only modest gains. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Finance Minister Koo believes AI partnership between South Korea and the U.S. will promote broader, long-term benefits. Our business correspondent Park Jun-han covers his remarks.
Korea's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance and Economy Koo says now is the time for the world to pay attention to the Korean economy, especially as the AI era unfolds.
Korea has strong capabilities across the entire AI ecosystem, from infrastructure and chips to world-class manufacturing, industry know-how, and a wealth of real-world data. The U.S. is also Korea's most important partner in AI. By combining the ideas of American companies and their business experience with Korea's capabilities and commercializing them here before taking them to global markets, I believe we can make the global economy more efficient.
This comment came when Koo attended a special luncheon hosted by the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, where Koo and AMCHAM Chairman James Kim discussed Korea's vision for long-term growth. Wednesday's discussion focused on strengthening Korea's position as a global financial hub, implementing bilateral strategic investments, and expanding AI cooperation. During his remarks, Koo outlined the government's 3-4-5 vision, where Korea aims to reach a 3% potential growth rate, position itself as one of the world's top 4 exporters, and achieve a per capita income of $50,000. He also highlighted capital market advancement tools, such as easing foreign exchange regulations and transitioning to 24-hour foreign exchange market operations. AMCHAM CEO James Kim welcomed the government's commitment. He noted that the strong AI momentum from tech giants like Samsung Electronics and SK hynix gives Korea a unique opportunity to solidify its position as a major investment hub and expand bilateral ties.
So as we commemorate the 250th anniversary of America's founding this year, there is no better time now to look ahead to the next chapter of the U.S.-Korea partnership. One defined not only by our security alliance, but increasingly by investment, innovation, technology, and public-private collaboration.
Minister Koo also noted he prefers calling AMCHAM member companies CORECHAM, emphasizing that American companies operating and investing here should be treated equally as Korean firms. He added that the government deeply appreciates their contributions and will do its best to maintain close communication and cooperation. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
The Lee Jae-myung administration has designated artificial intelligence as a critical driving force for national growth. That being said, our Cho Young-eun takes a look at how this ambitious goal is being advanced.
Artificial intelligence is rapidly expanding beyond the success of individual models, with competition now extending across a broader ecosystem of semiconductors, AI data centers, and physical AI. As AI becomes increasingly tied to national competitiveness, the South Korean government has set its sights on becoming one of the world's top 3 AI powers. The broader strategy builds on Korea's existing strengths in semiconductors, telecommunications, and automobiles, while seeking to connect them with AI to create a new industrial ecosystem.
소재 부품 장비 등 산업 생태계 전반을 함께 지원할 방안, 그리고 나아가서 피지컬 AI의 발전이 제조, 인공지능 전환의 역량 강화로 이어지는 산업 대도약 전략이 반드시 필요합니다.
Last month, President Lee also held a series of meetings with global big tech leaders and unveiled the San Francisco AI Declaration, signaling the ambition to position Korea as an indispensable player in the global AI supply chain. Experts say securing a leading position in the global AI race means more than developments in technology and innovation.
The first is how well equipped Korea is with infrastructure such as data centers. Then AI models are built on top of that, followed by data, and then the broader adoption of AI across industries to build industrial competitiveness. With all 4 of these elements, Korea can be considered competitive.
The expansion of AI infrastructure is also closely tied to talent, making advanced computing and research infrastructure essential to retaining domestic AI talent and creating the foundation for further growth. The goal is to turn these investments into stronger industries and ultimately greater export competitiveness. As Korea already has a strong competitive edge in manufacturing, experts say integrating AI into industries where Korea has established expertise could provide a more practical path towards strengthening its position in the global markets.
In the short term, securing industrial competitiveness is what matters. Even at the current level, Korea can build competitiveness by taking a full stack approach. There should be a focus on areas that the country is already good at, such as manufacturing, and find ways to integrate AI into those industries and turn that into exports.
As AI rapidly reshapes industries around the world, Korea's challenge is to move beyond developing individual technologies and build an ecosystem that connects infrastructure, talent, and industry, turning its AI ambitions into tangible industrial competitiveness. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
In his latest social media post, U.S. President Donald Trump ruled out talks with Iran while claiming that the Strait of Hormuz is open and in operation. Iranian officials, for their part, have been quick to dismiss the latter claim. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington is not currently holding talks with Iran and has no plans to begin new negotiations, contradicting his earlier claims that the two sides had been in active discussions. In a Truth Social post Tuesday, Trump said there are no talks or conversations taking place or scheduled with Tehran. At the same time, Trump insisted that the U.S. naval blockade remains in effect and that the Strait of Hormuz is open and operating. He also said all water mines in the strategic waterway have either been removed or detonated. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has been severely disrupted since the war began, partly because of the threat posed by Iranian mines. The United States launched a mine-clearing operation in April in an effort to establish safe passage through the waterway. But Tehran disputes Trump's claims that the strait is fully open. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf said Tuesday that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed until Washington meets conditions contained in an interim agreement reached in June.
And let me make it clear, until America implements its commitments under the Memorandum of Understanding, including lifting the blockade on the release of frozen assets, lifting the oil sanctions, ending threats and military operations on all fronts, and other conditions that America has agreed to under the understanding, the strait will not be reopened.
That agreement, signed on June 17th, was intended to end hostilities and create a path toward a broader settlement. But it quickly began to unravel over disagreements surrounding control over the Strait of Hormuz, a crucial shipping route that carried about 1/5 of global oil and liquefied natural gas supplies before the war. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said Tehran will not accept another temporary ceasefire and is instead seeking a permanent end to the nearly 6-month conflict. Araghchi said Qatar and Pakistan have played important mediation roles, but stressed that contacts between Iran and the United States have not amounted to formal negotiations. The 60-day negotiating period proposed by Washington expired Monday without a permanent agreement. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The U.S. Army has picked Hanwha Defense USA, a unit of South Korea's Hanwha Aerospace, to build prototypes for its mobile tactical cannon. Hanwha will deliver 6 mobile howitzer prototypes for the new self-propelled howitzer modernization program, with the option of 12 additional prototypes. The deal is expected to be worth up to $262.9 million, and the U.S. Army says its soldiers will use these platforms in a series of operational tests to assess their performance in realistic combat conditions. Global long-term bond yields are rising sharply as concerns grow over U.S. debt, Japan's finances, and overall inflation. Our Kim Bo-kyung has details.
Long-term U.S. Treasury yields soared to their highest levels in 19 years, with the 30-year yield rising to around 5.33% during Tuesday's trading session. The yield on the benchmark 10-year U.S. Treasury note has also recently climbed to around 4.75%, reaching its highest level in 19 months. Japan's 10-year government bond yield also rose as high as 2.945% during trading, hitting its highest level since 1996. Long-term government bond yields in Germany and France also surged to their highest levels since 2011 and 2008, respectively. The sharp rise in long-term government bond yields comes amid growing concerns over inflation stemming from prolonged conflicts in the Middle East, as well as rising debt and fiscal deficits. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. national debt stood at $39.9 trillion and is widely expected to surpass $40 trillion this week. Concerns are growing over future fiscal burdens and increased government bond issuance in Japan, too, as Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi pursues expansionary fiscal policies to stimulate the economy. Another factor behind the recent global bond sell-off is the AI investment boom. Major technology companies such as Microsoft and Meta are issuing large amounts of corporate debt to purchase NVIDIA's AI chips and build data centers, creating competition with government bonds for investor capital. With long-term bond yields surging around the world, this could pose a threat to stocks, the market strategist says.
With yields rising, we have to really consider what we're willing to pay for stocks, because of yields, of course, represent the discount rate for those future cash flows that equities tend to trade on.
With the stock market seeing a robust pace of gains so far this year, the expert says stocks could face a rockier path this fall as investor focus shifts from earnings to potentially yields, with limited earnings information coming out. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Heatwave advisories have now been expanded to all of Seoul and most other parts of the country. Tropical night advisories are also in effect for parts of Gangwon-do province and the southern regions, so please stay cool. As daytime temperatures climb, the atmosphere is becoming increasingly unstable, and we're seeing showers across parts of the southern regions right now. We're seeing some heavy rain across Jeollanam-do province, where a heavy rain advisory is currently in effect. Scatter showers will continue through this evening with 5 to as much as 60 millimeters of rain. And especially along the south coast where the ground has been weakened by heavy rain, we'll need to stay alert for possible damage. Tomorrow, Seoul will start the day at 24 degrees, Daejeon 23 degrees, and Busan 25 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju will all soar to 33 degrees. From Friday evening through Saturday morning, rain will move into the central parts of the country. Now here's a look at the weather around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Thank you for now.